Welcome, everybody. It is me. It is the Cyber Warrior. This is Cyber Warrior Studios, and I know you're all here for another amazing episode of Security Happy Hour. That's right. We got another amazing episode. It is St. Patrick's Day weekend, which means, I hope you have your green. We're going to be drinking. We're going to be having a good time, and we're going to be talking some very important topics. Most importantly, your health and well-being during work and everything we do. So I hope you're excited. I hope you're ready for the show, and I hope you brought some questions, because our guest at this time is an amazing person who has a lot to offer. So sit back, and we'll be back in about 10 seconds. And we're back. See, 10 seconds. That's all it takes. With me this evening, I have the one, the only, Lee Sult. Lee, how are you doing this evening, brother?
I'm doing great, man. Better now that I'm here. Happy to be talking with you. Happy to be talking with the crowd.
Yeah, definitely, man. And so, like, throughout the episode, we normally have people come and go. Some stay for the entire show. Some, catch the replay. So it's a very important topic we have at hand this evening, which is very much something that I think we neglect in this industry. A few other industries too, but being this is the one we live in, is cybersecurity. I see it more often than not with us. And so we're talking health and well-being, whether it's as an entrepreneur and building business or even in your everyday workflow. So let's kind of get started talking about, why this topic came about, because it was not your original topic.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the last time I was previously scheduled to be on here a while ago, and I couldn't make it. Fortunately, a good friend of mine, Marcus Schrober, just kind of came out of the crowd. I think he helped you out with the last time around. So thanks, Marcus. But I was in the process of helping my founder start his business or launch his business earlier this year, and I had a freaking cardiac episode. I was working 16, 18 hours a day, like just putting a ton of time in there, like I did 10 years ago when I started a last business, and I just kind of put this like young man's mindset on, or hat on, or whatever, and yeah, so my body was like, nope, it's time for you to slow down, go take some rest or whatever. And of course, I was going to the ER, and I'm like, I was a little bit scared. I'm like, I'm having a cardiac episode, like whatever it is, like maybe too much caffeine, whatever. And I get there and they're like, yeah, well, I wasn't even sure I was going to check in. And the nurse is like, yeah, you're going to go get some blood work. We're going to stick you on the EKG, and you're not going home soon. So you're going to be going home much later tonight. And then I texted you, and I'm like, yeah, so this is a thing, and I don't think I'm going to be able to make it, bro.
And at the time, like, I didn't realize it was you that was having the issue, because there's been a few times, I've had guests and they've had, like, spouses, kids, like,
yeah,
mom, dad, whatever. Very rarely has it been the actual guest that is having an issue. And so that's why I didn't want to put anything on blast. I didn't want to say anything initially when you had to step away, because your issues are your own, but being that is now the topic of the show, I feel it is very vital to kind of get that information out there of what was going on, because we neglect ourselves and our personal well-being so frequently in this industry, in IT. And again, there's other industries as well. I'm sure lawyers and doctors and all them do, but nurses working 24-hour shifts and taking doubles and working 48s or whatever the case may be. Like, so we see it happen. What do you think is really the catalyst to that causes us to just go?
Yeah, I think anybody that's in those mission driven positions where they just have something important to do, or folks that are like servant leaders, folks that put others before themselves, and especially when they have important work or work that they find themselves important, those are the guys that are going to put in a long day. And I used to say a lot of times, I've taught a lot in a bunch of different places on entrepreneurship and investigation, and I'll talk to some folks and they'll say, hey, I had a 50-hour week. That was a really long week. And I used to look down on that. And I used to say, hey, you know what? If a cop tells you that he's had a long week, that's a long week, because they're working 60, 70 hours by default a lot of times, especially with their extra jobs and so on. And now that I've been in entrepreneurship for a while, and I started a company overseas, and I would go weeks on end, and it's no exaggeration, be 100 hours, 80 hours, easy, for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time, just because I didn't know any better. And I was mission driven. I had people that I was responsible for the first time. And then I had leaders that led other leaders. And it's like, what do I do that? Now I've got to spend all this extra time, not focusing on the business, but playing catch up with the rest of these folks. And it's the same thing in nursing. When you're understaffed, it's the same thing in any of these professions that are mission driven.
Yeah. And, you know, as someone that is a veteran, I spent a lot of time in the military where it was like, you know, my soldier always come first. And that's how it's supposed to be, right? Your soldiers come first. So any hour of the day, anything going on, you're a soldier 24/7. Like, I'm going to pick up my phone no matter what. I'm always going to be there. And he got out. When I got out of the military, I still had that same mindset. It was call me any time of day. Like, I will work till, you know, I pass out. Like, it'll just keep going. And then I realized the toll it was taking on me. Because for me, I didn't have a medical issue necessarily, like a physical medical issue.
Yeah.
I had a mental issue where I was breaking down and got to the point where I was still burnt out. I was depressed. I was anxious. I didn't enjoy anything I was doing anymore. And I didn't want to go to work. I didn't want to spend time with my kids. Like, I didn't want to do nothing. And it wasn't until I pulled back and really started setting boundaries and time limits that I was like, oh, wait, I do still enjoy this. I just have to have these guardrails and these barriers set up in my boundaries in order to really drive forward.
Yeah, totally. And I think, I don't even know what the right way to say that is when you're in a mission-driven position, or you're just a mission-driven individual, like it's almost a rite of passage, right? It's like, you're just going to be that way. You're going to encounter that level of burnout, and there's like, you're not going to listen to anybody else because you know better. And hopefully when you encounter that burnout, you have the self-awareness, or you have some good friends or some help from somewhere that helps you learn how to take control of your life and set your own boundaries, because no mission-driven person lets anybody else set their boundaries unless it's like the UCMJ or some sort of policy, procedure, or law.
Yeah, and that's really the big thing is you have to. I feel like a lot of times we don't grow up, we don't truly become adults until we hit that point of, holy shit, I have to be an adult.
Yeah.
And it isn't bills, it isn't kids, it isn't your wife, not in a lot of these career fields. It's you have literally burnt yourself out. You're having a heart attack, you're depressed, whatever the case may be. Something is triggering to where you finally realize it. Now, for those people with families, a lot of times it's your spouse or your kids that are like, Dad, what's going on? Or Mom, what's going on? Why this shift in personality or what you're doing? And then that'll trigger it. For others like yourself, it was a physical issue where you were just like, holy shit, like, okay, like I have to change. And so, you know, I think we don't become adults until it's forced upon us. And in that way, we're challenged.
And for me, it's like, it's exactly right. It's not the having the child, or it's not having the responsibility. And I've got a 15-month at home. And it's not that. It's the, oh my gosh, now I can't. I might not be able to take care of her or my family if I continue to push myself at this rate. And you know, for me, it's like, you know, so I've got like other folks that are in these fields. I have a very well documented delayed stress reaction, and it's like I'll have super low heart rate or whatever in the midst of some big deal or some big event, and then afterwards, a day later, several hours later, or whatever, like the stress will hit me, and then I'll have a reaction to that. And I think that's what happened. I think that's what the doctors think happened too. And it's not. I mean, this happened many times, but not right before a podcast, not on a Friday night when everything should be relaxed. You know, not when I'm actually paying attention to this sort of stuff, and not so far after, right? So this is like, sleep deprivation has a major impact on you, like just your judgment and your physiology and all that stuff, and then amplified by just, you know, the stress of launching a business or helping a good friend launch a business.
Yeah, and that's going to play. You know, when we look at grind culture, and there's been a few posts last year they went out. I did some videos on it on TikTok and a few other platforms, and you know, put some content out on my own other podcasts that I was running for a little while. You know, when you look at grind culture, it's all about, to make money, to do this, you got to grind. Yeah, that's fine, but you still need these limits and boundaries. And if you were doing that 18, 19, 20 hours a day, by the time you go to sleep, you're not even falling asleep right away. And I know this because I know what your mind is doing. It is doing the same thing that all of ours does. you lay down and your brain kicks into overdrive and you're like, oh, wait, tomorrow I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. So you're never resetting. You're never healing.
100%.
And so I think that is where a lot of that comes into play is not only are you overworking yourself, but you're never resting.
100%.
Your brain never hits REM. Your body never, resets. And so you never heal from anything.
I've seen guys hallucinate from this, right? Or it's not necessarily like hallucinate, like I'm seeing another person, but like we'll work and we'll just grind until the job gets done. And then we get up the next day for that 5:30 a.m. briefing or whatever it happens to be, because this is some major crisis. And they get in there and they're like, hey, Lee, yesterday we talked about X, Y, or Z. I'm like, we did not talk about that. He's like, hey, like we made this decision. What's the status on this, that, or that? I'm like, we did not talk about those things. And it's like, after a while, you start to recognize it. And it's like, those are the things that they're talking through, or they're like, when they're trying to go to sleep, those are the things that they're trying to work through so that they don't forget them for the 5:30 a.m. briefing the next day. And they just, their brains aren't resetting. Right. And they get in and it's like, okay, you're going home. You're done.
I equate that, it's funny. We talk, there's a lot of jokes when you're married about how your wife will have an entire conversation, an argument with you without you actually being there. She goes through this entire process in her head of why she's mad at you. She's going to yell at you in her head so that she doesn't argue with you when she actually gets there, or she's already worked out all the comments you're going to say, so she's always right. And I think we do that internally too, but it's not necessarily for arguments. It's because we have so much those working, and again, men, women, it doesn't matter. Those in the workforce, when you go to bed, something about this industry and our personality type, we lay down, and instead of us solving problems at work, we're now solving it as we're trying to go to sleep.
100%.
And instead of writing it down and just being like, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this, we let it overwhelm us. And then we don't get the proper night's sleep because we're up for 2-3 hours, just processing it all in our head, going, yep, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Wait, holy crap, this was the answer to this problem I had earlier today. And you're not really doing anything for yourself by doing that.
Yeah, I remember one time, a long time ago, I was a civilian dispatcher for a police department, and we did police, fire, and EMS. And this is so funny. I think it's funny to this day. Anyway, I'm out. I don't remember if I was hunting or like traveling somewhere in a hotel room, but I remember one of my friends was there, and I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like dispatching an ambulance, like, or whatever. And he's like, Lee, you're like uttering these random numbers and these like streets or whatever. Like, what's going on? I'm like, I vividly remembered it, right? Like I vividly remember the call for service and everything. And I'm like, oh man, like I should sleep more. Like this would be.
I'm not normally like a sleep talker. Like I'm sure I do it a lot, but like not enough to like wake my wife up or like really for her to like cognizantly understand what I'm doing. But I still remember before we got married, one of the days we had my son and we were laying in bed, and I literally shut up, sat straight up, and I said something about, babe, shut the red door or something. There was no red door in our room.
That's awesome.
Never had a red door. She's looking at me going, what are you talking about? And like, I had to think about it and like wake up. And I was like, oh, wait, never mind. I went back to sleep. But it's crazy how our minds do these things. And it's even worse when you become so overwhelmed with work and so consumed by work that now it's overtaking your sleep pattern. Yeah. And it's waking you up and you're not getting that rest, which is why, like, come the end of your workday, you'll sign out.
Yeah.
Be done.
100%. And I think that's the message too, right? It's like, I think there's a couple pieces of it. One, both of us have experiences with this, whether we recognize it or not, that go back 15 or 20 years, right? Like, that's just the people that we are. And anybody that has that mission-oriented mindset, they're going to experience this, whether they know it or not. So it happens to everybody. It's not weird. It's not taboo. It just happens. And the way you avoid this is you have to actively set your own boundaries. And I still work in crisis management, which means I still have 24 and 36-hour days from time to time. But when I have those, I'm not going to show up at 9 o'clock in the morning in the office the next day. And fortunately, I work with a great team, which means I'm not going to be, they don't expect me to. Like, I don't have to come in and fill out a timesheet at 9 a.m. or if stuff is late, it's okay. I've got a great team to pick that stuff up. But I used to hold myself to an unrealistically high standard where it's like, I'm going to be Superman. I'm going to come in. I'm going to work this stuff, and it's just not realistic.
And I think as a parent, it makes it even harder, right? Because we already want to be Superman and be that rock for our families. And again, I don't care who you are, you still want to be that. Mom, dad, doesn't matter. You want to be that strong person for your kids and
Exactly.
be there for them and do everything for them. And when you're letting your work life consume your entire life and make that who you are, and everything's about work, your kids are going to see that. And if you want to set a good example, like, it's okay to work hard. You want to work hard. You want to build that mindset that working hard is good. But at the same time, you've got to be able to tell them, hey, you have limits. You got to be able to make time for yourself, for your kids, for your family. Like, if everything's about work, I'm sorry, I'm gonna say this, and I don't care who says what. You were just a number to your employer. If you were to die tomorrow, they are going to replace you in a week.
Yep.
I'm sorry. It's a fact. As much as you may love your employer, and I do, I enjoy the people I work with. Me and my boss are like, we've been friends for years. Like, cool. But if I died tomorrow, work wouldn't care. The work still got to get done. The mission still got to go on, and we're going to replace you in Charlie Mine.
I've been that employer multiple times, right? And I can tell you it's true. I care about my people, and I absolutely believe in servant leadership, but I still have a mission to accomplish. If you don't show up the next day, I'm going to find somebody. And because if it kind of goes on, and it's kind of the self-perpetuating thing, where if you blow up and something happens to you, all of the people around you, so now you're doing a disservice to your team, because the people around you are going to have impact from that. And then I'm going to have impact from that as the employer. And that's my responsibility. I accept it. That's fine. But now I'm going to replace you so that I don't have that impact anymore. And enough cycles of that. And the employer, I haven't gotten to the point where I'm detached from my people yet, but that happens all the time. Like, especially a larger organization, U.S. military, law enforcement organizations, whatever, somebody gets killed on the job. Like somebody's filling that slot in the next shift. And that's just the way it's going to be.
I mean, you look at a lot of these people want to work for like these, what do they call it? Like Facebook and Google and Amazon. And they're like, oh yeah, I want to work for these big companies, and they'll pay X amount of dollars, da, da, da. You know what? Chase money all you want.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, where I work and the people I work for, I want my people to care about me. Like, and I want to care about my people.
Yeah.
Which means I'm going to stick to the smaller companies where I know people versus somewhere where legitimately you're just a number.
Yep.
Like, you want to take time off, put it in through the system and someone will approve it, but you're never going to talk to your boss or your boss's boss or somebody. You might interview with them, but after that, good luck. Have fun. Never going to see him again. Whereas I talk to my boss almost on a daily basis. So I have meetings with his boss. Like, these things, the smaller companies, and they still pay well. So there's no reason to go work at these major companies unless you just for some reason have an obsession with Meta or Alphabet or Amazon.
Yeah, that's a good sign, by the way. If you're able to have skip level meetings with your boss's boss, that's a great sign. But,
and it's those skip level meetings, and like some of it is just, hey, I just need to have a conversation and figure out where the mission's going. Like, let's talk, and they're okay with that. And that's the beauty of smaller companies, is you can make that decision and talk to these people. And where I work, we're small, right? But we're not 5-person small. We got 100 of people, whatever. I don't know. I haven't counted. We have a good bit of people throughout the entire organization, and yet I can still skip a level. And how the CEO does meetings with us almost every month, not individually, like it's as a company, but still the CEO of the company still talks to us every month. So like,
and you probably, if you really had to, you probably have a route to go talk to that CEO.
Oh, you could literally just ping him on Teams and just be like, yo, homie, can we have a conversation? He'll be like, yeah, sure.
Yeah. And I hope they talk about an open door policy. All of this stuff is actually very important to, having, I like to think that I'm a good leader. I've had people tell me that. I've had very few people. The people that have yelled at me about being a bad one have been fired multiple times since I fired them. I've always tried to have that open door policy, and that's a big part to having work-life balance on your team.
Yeah.
the other side of that too is even if you have a good manager, somebody far better than me with far more experience or whatever, good leader at the very top of it, it's still your responsibility to set your boundaries, right? Because we talked about family and the example you set for your kids and so on. You set the example for your subordinates as well. And if you're in there every weekend and you're working till 10 p.m. every night, your people are going to do that too. And you're just creating a ticking time bomb. Now, if there's a crisis and it's a very clearly time-bound crisis, like, think about a structure fire or thinking about something else that's easy to understand. Like, you might work that, like, especially if you're the lead on a critical incident or something, you might work that for a long time, and that might be expected behavior. But you're going to get some time off after that, and that shouldn't be every single day.
Right.
And like, leaders have the responsibility to set their own boundaries and then help their subordinates set those boundaries. But at the end of the day, it is your job as a human being to set your own boundaries and live a healthy life.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I've yelled at many of the bosses. I have, because they're like, "Oh yeah, take time off, dude." I'm like, "Then you do it."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Don't tell your people to do something that you're not going to do."
Yeah,
because we're going to look at it, and if we take that time off, where's my promotion? Where's my raise? Where's any recognition for the things that I do? Because if I'm not living up to your standard, you're going to look at it. And again, this may not be true, but this is how people who live that life see it. Is if you're doing this, I should be doing it so I can get to where you're at, so I can get promoted, so I can get that raise, so I can make more money, whatever the case may be. Whereas if you actually honor what you say, and it's no longer, monkey see, monkey do, or, do as I say, not as I do type of deal. If you're honoring those limits that you try to set for your people and you're doing it yourself, it makes life a lot easier for multitude of reasons. One, you're not stressing yourself out unnecessarily. Work can wait till the next day. It's still going to be there. It's not going anywhere. You get it done today, you still aren't going to get an answer or a response or anything else till the next day from the other company or whoever you're dealing with, because it is what it is. And again, IR, differ, things like that, like actual responding to incidents, whole different can of worms. Yes, all hands on deck throughout the night, but you have the people there with you.
Yep. And
when it's just, I need to send a report, so do that shit tomorrow.
Yeah, man. I had that happen earlier this week. I was up at like 4:30 a.m. on Monday. Just exactly what we were talking about, right? It's like you go to sleep, you can't stop thinking. I'm trying to start being a morning person. I worked night shifts forever, and even as an entrepreneur, long story there. So I'm trying to get up early, like 6:30, something like that. I wake up at 4:30 on Monday or Tuesday. I can't remember. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm awake. I might as well start doing stuff. Well, I wake up at 5:30 the next day. I get a whole bunch of stuff done, and then it's Wednesday or Thursday comes around, and I've got like some proposals to send out, some quotes to send out, and I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm good, but I'm gonna hit burnout. Like, I can get this stuff out, but then they're gonna start emailing me back, and then I'm gonna have all of these other things to do. I'm gonna have to modify all of these quotes, and I'm like, I'm gonna send as much of this stuff out next week as possible, and I'm gonna I'm gonna risk missing my numbers for quarter one. For the services team or whatever, because I'm not going to burn myself out, and I'm not going to set expectations for my people to burn themselves out. And I told the CEO, and he's like, "Yep, fine, no problem." And because he values people too, and that's what you got to have, right? But in that moment, because it's not like the CEO is seeing me get up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm not pinging people, that early or super late at night on a regular basis. So I had to set my own boundaries, and I did. And I've got a supported team that made that happen, or that allowed that to happen, and is cool with the repercussions.
And that's the big thing, right? Because we look at it in this industry, everything's connected. So a lot of people, myself included, I'll put Outlook on my phone. I'll put Teams on my phone.
Yeah.
That way, like throughout the workday, if I go outside for a cigarette, if I got to go run somewhere, I can still answer message and make those short things get done. But like yourself, I know me. If I send something, I may not expect a response, but if you respond, I'm going to respond back. We're going to continue this conversation. It's just going to keep going. So you have to set that limit of, and I know some friends that what they do is they kill notifications to all of those work apps after a certain time. And I'm okay with that. Like, I encourage that. I just try to be more liberal with it in that I won't kill the notifications, but I also won't respond to every message right away, because if I do, it's going to become an issue, and it's just going to be an avalanche and a snowball effect.
Yeah, I do two things. So I manage teams overseas in Singapore, Hong Kong, all over the place over there for years and years and years. So and I lived there, but when I was home, it's like I got stuff all day long, I've got stuff all night long, and now it's like, look, I do this thing. It's called offline messages, and when I'm managing a team or the people that I need to communicate with late, if I am going to be working late on something, it's like, look, if it says offline message, I don't care if you're awake, do not respond to it. Like it is so I don't have to worry about like making sure I have the /remind feature in Slack or the delayed send or whatever. Like, I'm tired and I'm going to send this and I'm going to guarantee that the message gets there, but don't respond to it because I don't want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And then that sort of stuff helps, but it's got to be that proactive expectation setting and things along those lines. And also like getting good when people well, the other thing that I do is I do mute my notifications, and I tell folks, like, if you need to get a hold of me, just call me 100 times until I pick up. Because if it's not important enough to call me 100 times, it's not important enough to call me one time.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. And like what I've noticed some people do, and I've done this myself in the past, I will literally put in a message in all caps, because now, unfortunately with my company, can't see the message till you actually go into Teams, but they put that stupid restriction on, and I'm like, dude, I don't know if I want to go into Teams and respond to this. Like, let me see what the at least beginning part of the message is, please, so that I know whether or not to answer it. But like, what I'll do is I'll put in caps before I even write the message, do not respond. And it's just something because I may have done it that night, or like something triggered in my head. I want to send this message real quick. Do not respond. I'm expecting you to be with your family, doing whatever. But hey, when you come back to work, either tomorrow or after the weekend, whatever the case may be, this is some shit we got to work on. And like, I'll do that. And if you choose to respond, I'm probably going to correct you for it later. But I'm not going to continue that conversation. I already told you not to respond. That was just literally for you to sit in your notifications until later on. And like, but I know people are like me, and they hate notifications and those little bubbles. And so like you go through and you literally get rid of them all. And it just so happens with Teams, you end up reading the message. I still expect you to honor that beginning. Do not respond.
I just took a note to change my offline message to do not respond or be more explicit in the intent.
So like I literally have, let's see, so William Bailey, I love him. Corporate organization policies that stipulate that you're considered an insider threat actually help to set some work-life balance. Working after 8 p.m. is considered being an insider. Oh,
gotcha. I can speak about this from an investigative perspective.
Like we could talk about this from a few areas, because he's not wrong in that. That's actually a very valid policy.
I don't know where I don't agree with that at all from a entrepreneurial perspective or from a business owner perspective. Like, especially if I'm thinking like I've operated 24-hour teams. So
but again, I think they have their shift work, right? So you still have to set those hours and expectations. But from if you're looking at this and let's take away 24/7, 365, because in cyber we have a lot of SOCs, a lot of IR and things like 100%. That work like that. But when you're looking at it from a corporate and org policy, if there's data being transmitted, if there's things being done after a certain time frame, I could see where that comes into play, and that'll trigger a alert.
I'm gonna take a note. I'm writing some policies now. I'm gonna William, thank you. I'm gonna take a screenshot. I'm gonna take a picture of this. I'm not sure. I'm sure there's gonna be a you can see my smashed phone. I'm sure there's going to be a recording of this, but I'm going to go ahead and take a picture so I don't forget. That's a good idea.
That's pretty solid.
And one of the things we do in investigations too is we'll do, I call it cohort analysis. I believe it's called cohort analysis. And you're basically just trying to define normal for two situations. So it's like, what does that group of people normally do? So in a 24-hour environment, what is their normal working hour? And then, or working hour type of thing. And then with that particular individual, which types of actions do they normally take within which time periods? So it might be the sort of thing, especially for an engineering team, right? I'll go look at their activity over a 6 to 12 month time frame. And if I see that they have a release cycle every 2 months, and that every 2 months I see them working until 10 to 11 p.m. or whatever, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to let that one pass. Right. But if there's a policy that says 8 p.m. or whatever, and anything beyond that, then that's a pretty easy trigger for me to like, I'm going to focus on the spikes of activity that are after hours anyway. But if there's a policy that goes ahead and gives me the investigative basis or justification to trigger that. Yeah. And I think that is that's useful in both. It's kind of that stick. Don't work late if you don't have to. And if you have to, there better be a justification. Like you've got a late release, you've got an important project or an incident response case or whatever. So thankfully,
it provides a multitude of help. And even when you're looking at your UEBA, right, we talk about behavioral analytics when we're talking about like EDR and other things that are supposed to secure cyber. And so if you're putting things like this in play, and you're setting these alerts, then nobody, unless, to your point, it's a release, it's whatever, but you would notify your SOC. You would notify somebody, hey, X, Y, and Z is coming out. I'm going to let you know. I'm going to be logged in doing all this work at this time. Yep. And we have a client right now that was doing, they were running some scripts for Microsoft to do some troubleshooting or whatever, which triggered MDE and like Sentinel and Critical Start. Like it triggered all these companies to be like, hey, you might want to look at this. And so we're looking at it, and then we get on the phone, and he goes, oh, no, this was a script that they told us to run, da-da-da-da-da. Cool. Now we know that. Like, so we can take, if you send us that script and it's not signed, that's fine. We can take that exact file and file name and say, hey, if you see this run, it's clear. Like, they're doing troubleshooting.
Just add it to the baseline.
Yeah. Or like, hey, if you see, like, they have an imaging system. So if you see X, Y, and Z, cool. It's because it's an imaging system. This is what they do for imaging. We need to be notified of that. And we can't isolate these systems. Now, we could watch it, make sure that's what they're doing, but we can't isolate it because of what they're doing in the process. Right. Cool. But now having that knowledge, it helps us. Same as behavioral analytics, same as don't work after 8. Hell, we're a 9 to 5 office. Why are you working at 7 o'clock at night? Oh, well, I needed to get, no, I can wait till tomorrow. And it gives me backing to actually tell my people, go home. It'll be there for you tomorrow. Like, it's not.
That's a great point, actually. Yeah.
Let's see. Setting a policy like that means you've told folks you're going to be monitoring for it. I joke that I have to stop working at 8:01 p.m.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I can totally see that.
But it's true. Like, I think as a security team, and you can really work this out with like executives and stuff on a smaller organization. It doesn't work for like a Meta or a Google because not only are they running 24/7 operations, but for some reason they have it in their head they got to be working 20-hour days, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But like at smaller companies and at a smaller scale, you can literally impose those restrictions. Like, look, if you're not done with your work by 5, 6 o'clock, give them a time. I'm telling you, you're done.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, take your ass home and you're done.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite sayings is if you don't have anything to do, don't do it here. Go home. I'm still going to pay you. Like you got your job done, or you got your job done, or somebody else didn't bring in enough work for you. Like
my big thing has always been, I don't expect you to work all night.
Yeah.
Like if you have decided to procrastinate and now you have something due the next day, that's on you.
Yep.
However, I don't expect you to work till 10 o'clock at night every night.
Yeah.
There is no client that important.
Yeah, you know.
I'm sorry, the president of the United States could be like, I need this in a week, and y'all got to work 20 hours a day, and I'm going to tell you to get fucked. I don't care. Like, it is not that important. It is not a matter of national security, life and death. No. Like, that's just how I look at things.
Yeah. I would probably disagree with that, but that's what I do for a living, so... but yeah, I get the point.
Down to those setting those boundaries, and if it's not life or death, if it's not going to bring your business down, if it's not national security,
Yep.
then it can wait till the next day.
Absolutely. And if it's not worth calling me 100, this is why I have all these other controls in place, right? You can text me, you can send me Slack messages, you can send me emails, you can call me, you can hit me on Signal or whatever else. The phone doesn't ring. And if it's important enough, you'll call me enough times that the phone starts ringing.
Yeah.
And I'm with you there. It's like, if there's got to be real impact on a line, and not just you having an amygdala response and freaking out because you think something's important. Like, you know, everybody can pick up the phone and send a text message and be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have sent that, but now I've started something. Everybody can pick up the phone and take that next step to make that phone call. But it's when you've really got to slow down and think to start making that phone call 2 or 3 or 5 times, so that phone actually starts to ring. And you know, I guess there are situations, especially in emergency services, where you have to pick up that phone on the first call. But yeah, in the corporate world, man, like, I'm with you. Like, the president's never going to call me for anything. It's like, you know, and one of the first things I say when I go into a crisis management situation is I like to use the Socratic method. So, like, rather than telling people what's going to happen, I'll sit there in the room and I'll use one technique or another to kind of like get the gravitas and take control of the conversation. And I'd be like, hey, is anybody going to die today? And everybody normally is like, looks at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, okay, is anybody going to the hospital today? And like, no. I'm like, is anybody going to lose their job today? And they're like, well, okay, yeah, maybe. Legit.
That's a possibility. Let's pump the brakes.
But it level sets the expectation. And now we've brought this back down from a full-on amygdala fight or flight thing back down to this is what we need to consider, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, now we're having a conversation. Who can go home right now so that they're fresh in the morning?
I like the way I'm thinking. I do. I like that way of thinking. So I got a comment here from Griffin InfoSec. I love him. He's another one. He's always on here. If you impose these limits, that could also take away from flexibility if I want to work late one day and leave early another day. What's your take on that one?
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at with I've been a startup entrepreneurial guy, and, you know, fairly flexible schedules, and I work with different time zones at different times of year for different projects or whatever. So I get where you're talking, what you're talking about, Griffin. And I think there's like the way, so this actually becomes a leadership issue, right? And there's a difference between management and leadership. Mm-hmm. And as you grow a company, so I don't even know. I'm kind of talking out of my ass, so please feel free to correct me. I feel like the smaller you are and the earlier you are in the creation phase of an organization or a team, like, leadership matters a whole lot more. The larger you get, the more it's less about creating something new or like creating assets or building the first members of a team, and the more it becomes about management. And when you hit that management, it's less about your personal judgment or, you know, hiring effective leaders that can make good judgment when there is no policy or there is no expertise or like a precedent setting events in the past or anything like that. So, like, you have to have those policies so that the manager knows what to go back to and which standard to hold to. That's just, at some point, that is what is expected of a leader and expected of a management and executive team. To your point, Griffin, if you're in you know, like an early stage startup or like even 10 years into a startup, it's still fairly flexible. Like, that's going to happen. You know, you'll have a security team, but the team will be small enough. There's a concept out there called Dunbar's number. I'd recommend you go look that up.
I've seen it.
The team will be small enough that they'll just know, right? You'll flag it the first time and they'll be like, oh. And if it's a good team, every single time, if you have a good working relationship, you'll tell them, or they'll know which project you're working on, and you can work late when you want to, or you can, you know, come in early when you want to, or whatever. In a more mature organization, you just tell them, like, I'm going to sit in this bracket where I have modified working hours for this amount of time or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't like the stringent policy where I have to go in and like click a thing. I'd rather just pick up the phone and call somebody and be like, hey, operations people, like, I'm going to work late.
And I think that's really the big thing, right? And so the big thing about this show that I talk about when you're trying to find a job in this industry, but in general, I think in IT and cybersecurity, what I have found best to work when I worked help desk and system administration in cybersecurity is those relationships, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't want people to be afraid to pick up the phone and call me and say, hey, this and this is going on. Yeah. Just like you should not be afraid to pick up the phone and call, you know, an MDR company or a SOC or whatever and be like, hey, look, I'm gonna be working late today. I just want to let you know. So when you see this trigger, just know it's me. Like I'm here. I'm working. I got shit I want to get done before tomorrow, so that tomorrow I can work half a day. Like, and they'll understand that, and they'll be okay with that. But if you don't cultivate those relationships, if people don't know you, then yeah, I'm sorry. If I don't have that relationship with you, and all of a sudden I'm seeing trigger after trigger of like, oh yeah, I got this data going outbound, this data coming inbound, they're downloading all these files. You're an insider threat at that point.
100%.
Like that's how I'm going to view it.
100%.
And that's because that's how we also get trained in insider threats, right? When you see people go outside the norm, you're not a threat.
And a lot of time when you're investigating insider threats, you don't have 2 years worth of behavior or like data to determine behavior, right? You got like 30 days or 90 days at most, and you might not have had one of those things where you need to work late, right? So it might look like an outlier within the limited data set. On that point of making friends and developing it's in my to-dos on a monthly basis. I talk to at least one person from every single important partner that we have, and from every division that we have every month. I don't know when I'm going to need it. I don't know when I'm going to need to, like, even if it's just a 15-minute phone call to say, hey, what's going on and how are you doing? I mean, I genuinely care about these people, and I get busy, so I don't want to forget. But from I need to do my job well perspective, that's a critical component.
It definitely is. Like so before I got done working today, right? It's a Friday. I know I got my show to prep for. Work knows, my boss knows. Like, we've advertised the fact that I do this show every Friday at 7 p.m. And so, like, it's no secret. And it's funny because last month we had our annual meeting for the entire organization. And I met this guy, Joe. Now, mind you, at the time I met him, I was feeling good. And I was definitely a few beers deep, definitely. But I remember his face. I remember his name. I remember me and him talking about, all the things we talked about. I remember the entire conversation. But, like, I don't remember his last name. And so he messages me earlier in the week or like late last week and was like, hey, I remember we said we were going to get catch up. Let's put some time on your calendar. I was like, cool, yeah, let's do it. And I look at his picture, and he does this on purpose because, he's an asshole like that. I love him for it. But, like, I was like, I don't remember this guy. Like, I looked at his picture. I was like, I don't remember this guy. Then he gets on camera, and it's the same dude that I would talk to for like the last 2 hours before I passed out for the night, to go home the next day. I was like, oh, yeah. Here, come to find out, he's like an advisory CISO for our organization. And I'm like, oh, that's even better, because that's like eventually where I'd like to get to is like advising CISOs.
Yeah.
CISO, however you want to say it. Yeah. Like, I'd like to get to that level. And so, like, it makes it even better because now I'm having this conversation and it's like out of the blue, like, just dude that's higher up than me that knows more than me, I'm gonna learn from you. And to have those conversations, I'm gonna learn from my partners. I'm gonna learn from everybody I can. So those relationships, to build them and cultivate them and just literally have 15-minute, 30-minute conversations. To your point, how are you doing?
Yeah.
How's business? How the kids? How's the spouse? How's the partner? Whatever the case may be. And then you get to this point where now they're your friends. Now when shit hits the fan, right, between this partnership, because things outside of your pay grade or somebody screwed something up, you still have this relationship to keep it under control.
Yeah.
And that's really what makes or breaks a lot of these, company relationships.
Totally, man. And like, there's so much to the leadership and the self-awareness aspect of that. Like, I think one of the most important things in just being a professional and growing over your career and just those relationships matter. I don't think there's anything more important than proactively. And I definitely would classify myself as a or have historically I've been an introvert, and it's been through effectively train. Like, this is the first year where I go out and I talk to people, and I'm actually getting energy when I go out and I talk to people. Normally, it's very exhausting. I go back to it's super draining. And this is the first time really in my life, and it's part of it is because I've maintained these conversations for so long, or these relationships for so long. Now, like, I'll go out and I'll go to a group of people, and everybody's like, Lee, dude, it's been so long since we see you. And they're like giving me this positive energy, and I haven't seen these guys in a long time. And I'm like, you know what? Like, it boosts my ego. It makes me feel good about myself. And man, how I mean, for me, I'm still processing this, right? Like I almost feel like I need to go talk to a psychologist and see if I'm crazy. I'm like, can you really go from like an introvert to an extrovert, or how does this work? Or
I think it works both ways.
Yeah.
To be honest. So it really depends on the situation. And again, like yourself, I'm no psychologist. I'm no doctor.
Yeah.
I literally just have experience from growing up. And so for me, it's weird because if it's more personal, right? So meaning we're out having beer, we're shooting the shit, whatever the case may be. I have more energy for that than, I got to go to this meeting because of X, Y, and Z, or I'm going out with people that literally I have nothing in common with.
Yeah.
And like that type of, realization of like where my limits are. Like me and my wife have had many conversations because she'll be like, oh, you go over here and you don't say nothing. Yeah. And like I had to understand her limits because it's like, babe, we go over here and you don't say nothing. But then I realized we have the same issue. If everybody's talking about something that you have no background in, what are you going to contribute? And it's just draining because then you're like trying to find a foothold, but you have nothing to contribute. That'd be like me going anywhere talking about soccer. I don't know shit about soccer, or if you're across the border or across the pond, football, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I don't know shit. If it ain't American football or talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins and hockey, or talking shit on the Pirates because I'm from Pittsburgh and the Pirates suck because they trade away all their good players. Like, I have very limited scope in sports other than the Steelers, the Penguins, and how shitty the Pirates are. Like, that's the length of conversation I can hold.
Another thing that I'm starting to learn this year, just in the past couple of weeks, where kind of this like extroverted stuff is starting to come out, is I was talking to my team. So this week I'm slammed. I was buried last week. Last week was like probably 70 hours. And I don't mind. That stuff does not burn me out at all. Not one bit. I can hit 80 hours and I'm like, I'll be tired. And I hit that this week and I'm like, I need to back off a little bit. And I've hit burnout so many times in my life that I just know when it's coming in.
Right. You just feel it now. You're like,
I'm going to put the brakes.
I'm out.
I've got other people I'm responsible for, so I'm not going to push through this one. So I start talking to other folks on the team, and I'm like, hey, this is where we're at. We're doing really good, but I'm working a lot. And because of it's not like me. Like I shouldn't take credit, but I do make the effort to go out and maintain relationships where I can. And because of that, because we have a really great team and we do maintain relationships with each other, I explained to them again. I'm having to take my responsibility. I'm pushing stuff off. And I had like 5 people individually come out to me and be like, hey, and within their own expertises, right? They're like, hey, Lee, I know you're working on this thing. Can I take that off your plate? And I'm like, man, it's bringing tears to my eyes right now because of how important those relationships are. And they'll care about you. And that's how you manage your mental health and all of this other stuff in yourself it's like, it's a team problem. It's not just you. Which is very common.
That requires a cognitive understanding of where your limits are and what's going on.
Yeah.
Because to this day, I come across leaders that like they don't, and I had the same problem coming up in tech, knowing how to fix networks, knowing how to be a sysadmin and a help desk. I knew I could get the job done 20 times faster than anybody else in the military.
Yeah.
Literally, I'd come up in this industry. I've been building and fixing computers since I was 7 years old. Like if something was, hey, we got to do this, and this, cool, bet, done.
Yeah.
So like for me, I was very, very, very bad about delegating because I knew I could get the job done. I knew I could get it done quicker.
Preach
it piles up, right? You're sitting here like, all right, I got this one and 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 this one, and you're not delegating because you're like, no, I got this, or nobody else can do it but me, or whatever. When in reality, other people can't. It may take them longer, but they can still do it. So you have to like pull back and be like, you know what? No, I need to actually let other people do their job and do this. And I've seen this problem with leaders who want to protect people and want to do all this and want to like run companies and just protect everything. And it's like, dude, like you realize you have people that have been doing this job 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. that can do it. It may take them longer than you, but they can do it. Let them have it.
Yeah, I think I got a couple things on that. One is, I think it legitimately takes 20 years in an industry or in a mission-driven industry for somebody to figure out that good enough is better than perfect.
Yeah.
So like perfect burns people out. And generally speaking, the person that is the customer, the victim, whoever it is that is receiving perfect, cannot detect a difference between good enough and perfect. So I am a firm believer in good enough is better than perfect. But there's also quality. You don't have to worry about quality controls when your team is executing at perfection. You can remove that entire business unit or whatever, however you want to think about that. And it is a thing. Like having quality controls is a thing when you're executing just good enough or a little bit over good enough. And there's business functions and everything. It's a different thing.
But even on that concept, right? So the last company I worked for, the way we did QA was you write a report, right? Whether it's a pen testing report, incident response, whatever, it goes through this entire process where your leader isn't doing the work. They're just checking it. They're checking for 100%. Errors. They're checking to make sure like things line up. And hey, is this explained properly? And then it carries on. Yep, approved. Go ahead. But you still did the work. You still produced the report. You just have to go through and fix these things. That's the best part of the best type of QA system in our industry.
Yeah,
it's not in the work you do; it's in the reports you write. Because the majority of what we do is writing reports. Let's be honest.
Communicating technical findings to a non-technical audience. And you're right. The managers get what you inspect and not what you expect.
Yeah.
Unless you're operating a team that does perfection, right? Like nobody's SEAL Team 6 in this industry, and if you are, you're
bullshit. I'm SEAL Team 6. Yeah, damn it, me alone.
But yeah, if you maintain a small team, you can get away with not having some of that stuff, and you can execute it at a higher level. But you're going to burn people out.
Yeah.
I think one of the other examples I have about the holding on to those technical things for too long as a manager or as a leader or whatever, which I definitely did as a CTO. I definitely held on to technical stuff for way too long. And that's one of the biggest learnings of my career. Anyway, I had this guy, we'll call him Soup Sandwich. If he's watching, he'll know exactly who I'm talking about.
And, you gotta love when they know their nicknames.
Yeah, well, he named himself. It's one of those sort of things. It's like a pilot called Fireball. You only get that one way, right? Anyway, so Soup Sandwich was he's a good friend of mine to this day, and I help him with his business. He runs his own business now. Awesome fellow. And I would. Basically, I was his technical superior, and I would help him write his reports or whatever. And it was one of my first big leadership lessons. And his reports sucked; they were terrible. To this day, they were some of the worst reports I ever read. But he did good work, right?
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until afterwards, and we caught up like a year after I left that company, and we didn't work together anymore. And he's like, "Dude, Lee, it's like." You left and I had to figure out how to write reports and blah, blah, blah. And we collaborate now. And like, I read what he does and he does a much better job than what he used to do. And I'm like, even then, this is probably 10 years ago at this point. And even then I was like, I'll let him down as a leader. Like I should have just let him fail and I should have held his ass accountable and I should have made him fix that thing 15 times if that's what it took. And because I owned it, I didn't. It wasn't impactful. It didn't help him grow at all. Right. It kept the whole team down because I spent too much time on that, rather than just holding him accountable and making him fix it and telling him to go talk to a different team member or find mentorship elsewhere.
So I've had two people in that regard, in that same effect, that have had huge impacts on my life and how I am as a leader and how I expect reports and things like that. The first one I came across was a senior NCO in the Air National Guard. And when I was there, I was working help desk. And so I knew she had all this tribal knowledge to the network, to everything going on. So like 9 times out of 10, if something came up, I'd go to her. I'm like, yo, Robin, I'm having this issue. Can you help me out? Her first response every time, did you look it up? Did you try to find the answer? If you had not exhausted every resource before going to her, she wasn't going to give you an answer. She's like, go find it.
Yeah.
Which taught me a lot, because that is a lot of our industry. That's how you build your knowledge, not by being handed the answer, but finding it and establishing your own troubleshooting techniques. And so that was huge for me in how I approach a lot of troubleshooting situations and coming up in help desk and sysadmin. Like, I've lived that life. And so that's been huge. The other one was the last company I worked for. So they developed something called the GOAT within GitHub. And it was an automated checker or whatever. I can't remember what its acronym stood for.
Like CI/CD pipeline checking thing.
Yeah, it basically, it was a CI/CD thing, but it checked everything, right? So if you were writing a report and we would do it in markup, it would check not only the markup language, it would check, hey, you're using these words, this capitalization, this punctuation, like literally built in. Every checker that you can use through command line to check a document was built into this bitch. And you're just looking at it going, I can't pass the freaking GOAT. Look, this word, it does not exist in the English dictionary, but it exists in the cyber dictionary. It's a real word. Let it go. So then you had to look up, how do I bypass this particular checker for this particular thing? And you'd have to do it. But it worked because it forced you to not only learn those technologies that were checking it, but also how to properly write documentation.
Yeah.
Because then once you got past that and you made that first check, then your boss checked it and was like, okay, it passed here. Now I'm going to check for, does it make sense? Is the customer going to understand it? Da, 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 da. And if they didn't, they'd put their notes in and then say, hey, you might want to look at this. I hated it, but it made sense. Like, I can't argue it because I hated it because I hate documentation, but understand it and love it for what it enforced and made us do.
Yeah. We are not going to go down the Chat GPT line, but I feel like the teams that I managed after Grammarly was a thing, they can't write. That's not all true, but like as far as the quality of writing across the entire team, like people that can rely on Chat GPT or not Chat GPT, Grammarly, or like their grammar is not good and they can't figure it out without a tool. It's kind of like us driving around with GPS now. And I think Chat GPT or any of these technologies are going to be kind of the same. It's like, it's not like, I don't know, gender aside, it's not separate the men for the boys sort of thing. It's like, it's just creating dependency on technology.
Well, look what we did with calculators and like growing up, right? You're never going to have a calculator in your pocket. Now kids are allowed to go to school with their cell phones.
100%.
And their cell phones are a calculator.
I can't do long division to this day because they gave me a calculator to do it in high school or middle school.
Really? They gave us a calculator and told us you're not allowed to use it. The only time I was allowed to use my calculator was for graphing and algebra. That was it. Like, I was not allowed to use one.
The exercises in my class were how to use a calculator for the division stuff. And that's...
What is it? Hold up. I got to ask. And again, I got to know. So I'm 37 years old. I've been going through, like, when I went through school, yes, calculators were a thing. We had TI-85s, like people made games and did all this other stuff on them in high school. But learning division, long division, multiplication, you did that shit on your own.
Yep.
So, like, how old are you that they let you do this shit?
37. I'm the same age.
Where did you go to school?
Charlotte Mecklenburg School Systems. No love lost. If you got a problem with that, then you can't call it defamation because it's absolutely 100% true.
Dude, that's utterly
it's crazy. Like, I've sat down. I mean, I can figure it out now. Like, but legit, I had to sit down and teach myself this stuff after the fact as an adult. I mean, I'm a little dyslexic too, so that doesn't help anything. But I was never taught that. Like, they taught me how to use the calculator in school.
Like, can we
still got that calculator by the way?
Instead, and how to like go through all these loopholes? That'd be great.
Dude, it's crazy. Like, and that's another sort of thing. It's like I learned how to write reports and things the hard way. Make sure I don't know if you know who Harlan Carvey is, but like if you have worked for somebody that has worked with Harlan Carvey and they have his so what approach to report writing, you are a good report writer. And if anybody thinks that Harlan Carvey is an asshole when he reviews your reports, I wouldn't say that you're right. Just suck it up so that you can learn how to write good reports.
Yeah. I told my buddy this week. I said, we need to hire a technical writer. Well, I said, we need to hire somebody that can write all of our process or documentation, because I hate writing documentation.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of process
either. I know it needs done. And like, as a manager, I'm like, wait, I can delegate this. But then I realized, like, neither me nor my entire team have the time right now to do this. I want to hire someone to literally, that's all they do is document everything. Like, that's literally their whole point of being in the organization, is just document everything we do.
You're looking for a process engineer. I've hired a couple of those over the years.
Like, all right, give me some names. I need some.
So these were, I hired. I think both of them were based out of Singapore. So when I lived over there, but yeah, I mean, you can, like, process engineer is a job. You'll normally get a process engineer out of a business school. So like a process engineer and MBAs go hand in hand. Yeah. The challenge will be like a process engineer that understands cyber nuance if it's going to be technical stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you're technical, like the farther technical you get, the more away from the actual process engineering field you get.
Right. So we are at over the top of the hour. You got a family. I got a family. The people in chat got a family. We got 54 viewers right now across all platforms. And yes, I am on every platform, to include Instagram, IG, or Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So all the chats come from YouTube tonight, which is amazing. Please, super chats or tips are down below. Feel free to do it. But saying that, if you have any advice to give for people breaking into this industry, and let's try to keep it around the healthy living aspect.
Sure.
What advice would you give them for the ones just trying to get in?
Just trying to get in, and live healthy. That's a good question. I would say there's a couple of things. There's a couple of things on that. It's hard when you're getting in. Cyber is not an entry level field, and you have to have a background on that, or you have to have some background before you get in here. So getting into the field, number one, have a home lab. And if you're gonna interview with me, or if you're gonna give me a resume, your network map for your home lab your resume better include your network map for your home lab. And you better be able to talk through it, and you better be able to tell me the experiments that you do in your home lab. The second thing that I would say is, if it's not a hobby and you have to work at it, don't do it late, right? If it's something that you're passionate about, and I've got a friend of mine right now that's looking to change careers into cyber, and he gets empowered from staying up late, playing video games and stuff like that, staying up late, working in his home lab. It is not worth it if it doesn't give you energy to stay up late and study and do all of this crap, like studying and memorizing things and all of the technical jargon. You're going to get more of that when you get into the role. Don't burn yourself out before you start the job. But give me that network map on that resume, and I'll probably hire you.
Dude, I don't even have a network map for my shit. But I get your point, right? There's always, everybody has their nuances for how they hire people.
Yeah.
My biggest thing is, if you're going to tell me you have a work-life balance, tell me your hobbies.
Yeah, 100%.
Tell me what it is you do in your off hours. Because I am a very big proponent of, like, I lived my life where I wasn't doing cybersecurity for work. So I did cybersecurity and Hack the Box and try Hack Me and everything I fucking could in my off hours to learn and grow.
Yep.
If you want to work for me as somebody who's already in this industry, right? So it's already your full-time job. I swear to the gods, your hobbies better include something other than Hack the Box.
100%.
Tell me you're playing video games or spending time with your kids or going camping or hiking or whatever. 100%. Because I want to know you are taking time away from a damn screen.
Yeah, like, totally agree.
I don't want you to be me. Just like I tell my kids, I don't want you to be me. I want you to be better than me. Yeah. I know what mistakes I've made. I don't want you to make the same ones. So if you have experience, please don't be making cybersecurity your entire existence in life. Don't be a hacker 24/7. Because I'm not going to pay you any more, whether you do it at 10 o'clock at night or noon the next day. You're not getting paid more or less. Like, your salary is your salary. And on that same perspective, if you're just trying to break in, 2 hours a night is all I really expect people to take at most.
Yeah.
Depending on how quick you learn things, 2 hours a night to put into learning the industry. Don't make it your whole life. Do not. Because you're not going to get paid more just because you spend 18 hours a day doing it. You're not.
That's a fact.
But on that note, it is St. Patrick's Day weekend. I got a lot more beer to drink this weekend. It's going to be a good weekend. It is the holiday of one part of my being. I'm a German leprechaun, among other things. I'm a mutt. But I will be drinking a lot this weekend. Y'all have fun. You enjoy your weekend, please. Everybody's Irish this weekend. I don't care what anybody tells you. And if they want to argue with you, send them to me. They can argue with me because we all need haters. And if you ain't got enough people to hate on you, feel free to hate on me. I'm good with that. Otherwise, I love you all. Take care. Enjoy your weekend. And I'll see y'all next week for another amazing episode of Security Happy Hour.
See you guys.